Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts, and this is another episode of the Readily Random Podcast.
Hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly high.
Man, I got to tell you, you guys know I love the intro, and we're talking about every boy and girl's hopes and dreams. And this particular episode is going to put a little perspective on every little girl and boy's hopes and dreams. I have a gentleman here that at one time was an attorney, and he stopped practicing law to film a documentary. And I got to tell you, I watched it just this morning, so it's fresh on my mind, and it was very eye-opening. And it's about a little island called Madagascar. I think we've all heard of it. We've seen the cartoon. We've seen all the fun stuff about it. But, you know, it really goes much deeper than that. And his documentary is Madagasikara, and it features stories. There's some political dissent that's in there as well. But primarily, it's about three different women that have three different walks of life there in Madagascar. And I can't say that I envied any of them. But we'll get deeper into that here shortly. But first, let me introduce you to Cam Cowen. Cam, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Larry. And thanks for taking an interest in the film. It means a lot.
When it was presented to me for the opportunity to talk to you, I was blown away. And I was like, you know what? That is something that I feel like I need to know more about. And I want to share with my audience. So
Perfect.
It works out great here. So like I say, man, I told you before that in the green room that I watched the documentary this morning, and it's kind of a rough viewing. Give us a little perspective on what you would expect a Madagascar film to be as compared to, you know, what Madagasikara is all about.
Yeah, no, that's the nub of it, isn't it? It is a tough film to watch. I did not want to fabricate something fluffy, because that's not the situation there. Although you do see these remarkable people who have a great sense of humor and find their joy out of extraordinarily difficult circumstances. They have amazing dignity and wonderful perspective on life. But it's a tough movie because it's a tough country. And the comparison is stark between what we know about Madagascar and what the reality is. So the tagline for Madagascar is the real Madagascar. Madagascar is the name they call their country. Madagascar is a French colonial name pinned on the country, and we all refer to by the colonial name. So I felt that it was important to try to give them back their name of their country and present the reality of their existence. We mostly know about Madagascar. Almost everybody over the age of 4 knows the word Madagascar, right?
Sure.
Because the animated films, great animated films, I love them. But it can numb us to what is really happening. In fact, it could sort of make us think that maybe Madagascar is a made-up land, you know, a fairy tale land or something.
Definitely.
But it's real. I think the other way we know about Madagascar is through the environmental efforts to save the lemurs and the rainforest there. It's an extraordinary place where 90% of the vegetation and animal life are found nowhere else on Earth because it was so isolated millions of years ago. But its people are unique as well. Their language is unique. They look unique. They actually don't think of themselves as part of Africa, even though geopolitically they are. And it's a large island. It's the 4th largest island in the world. And it's got a population now that's approaching 30 million people.
Wow.
Half the people are children, and half of the children are chronically malnourished. And when I first learned about Madagascar in a meaningful way, it was the poorest country on the planet. And it's the only country that is not a conflict country that is poorer today than it was in 1960, the only country in the world. A lot of my inquiry was, how did it get that way, right? And why do I not know about it? You know, can anything be done about it? And then I started about a year of research, and I did a reconnaissance trip over there to learn more and meet people. And I developed a few theses and wanted to actually test them, play them out while I was filming and interviewing people. And I wanted to be challenged as to those theses. I wanted to challenge people's views of what was really going on. And out of that process, I think, came an accurate understanding of how the country got that way.
Well, let's give a little perspective on how the country really is as compared to how we would think it is because of the cute little lemurs and the animated films. This is one thing I don't know that I wish I did. Is the movie out, or will it be releasing?
Yeah, it'll be released on June 26th on Amazon Prime and Docurama, and then other streaming services shortly after.
Okay, I wanted to make sure we get that out there. So, but I also don't want to put any spoilers out there. But it's it's a documentary, so it's not like I'm going to spoil the plot.
That's right.
But it's shocking when you see the lives of some of these folks. And you mentioned, and it's even mentioned in the film, that they were poorer now than they were relatively in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And it's evident when you see one of the storylines where they live and work in a landfill.
Right.
And I use the term work loosely because really their work is whatever they can get to do. And their work consists of also digging through the landfill for scraps and other things that they can sell for a small profit, for maybe a handful of rice or, whatever it may be. It's really, as a spoiled American, and I know that for a fact, I look over there and they live in conditions that I don't understand how it's done.
Right.
Is that something that stumped you as well? And as you were filming the documentary, did you kind of learn more about how they live in such abject poverty?
I did.
Yes, still maintain a positive attitude?
I did. It was eye-opening. So I had done research. I had talked to law school students who had been in a human rights study clinic, who had been there. That's where I really began to understand what was happening. So I had a pretty good picture. I imagined a picture of it, but when you were there, it's completely different, and it's so shocking because it's so prevalent. It's not just isolated in an area. It's everywhere. Of course, when you have a population of that many, at that time when I first started going there, about 24 million people, and 92% live on less than $2 a day. It's just stunning. And it made me sort of more focused and more dedicated to really understanding it. The other important thing is, to a person, everyone I met was absolutely lovely. I mean, the Malagasy people are gentle people. They're warm, engaging. Of course, not everyone, and certainly not the politicians I portrayed, but they're really amazing people. And I've got so many stories where I thought we were blocked, that we wouldn't be able to do something I really wanted to do, and one of the Malagasy crew just walks up to somebody, and it's like they're all brothers and sisters in this, and it's really kind of amazing because they're almost all in the same socioeconomic conditions, right?
Right.
Maybe somebody has a little bit nicer home than somebody else, but they're all brothers and sisters in poverty. And that comes through. And even for those who have escaped it, who were in, they know, because it's only by good fortune and maybe the dedication of their parents that they were able to get an education and get a job. But they know. So I loved that feeling of community, that feeling of family that they share even with strangers. And their customs are extraordinary, the way they greet people and help people and feed people and share tea and all of that. It's just embracing. And it was important to me and very helpful to me because it was exhausting to do. We knew it was going to be a multi-year project because we were committed to following these families for several years. And so we made a lot of trips over there, but the people were extraordinary and made us want to double down and triple down on our commitment to getting a good film out.
Well, and that's something that I'd love to speak to, is the fact that it is a very high quality film. I wasn't sure what to expect you have a legal background, and then you started to go in and pursue this documentary. I thought, maybe this is a entry level film. No, this is a high level, high quality, beautifully shot, beautifully rendered documentary.
And that was the goal. It was I knew if we had a chance at making a difference, we're not only going to have to tell good stories, we were going to have to engage audiences. And I really did want to do the Malagasy people justice by making it a high quality film. So the image we had was if we were viewing it on the big screen, right? And we wanted big visuals and big sound and make it entertaining's the wrong word, but totally enthralling, even though, and this was part of the trick, we wanted to also give a true feel of what it's like to be in Madagascar, where things are a little bit slower, right? A little bit lower key, just because of the economy there and the infrastructure and all that. Not too slow so that, you would turn it off after 10 minutes. But, that was part of the challenge. But we did want to make it big. It's about the country. It's about the social, political, and economic dynamics in the country. And we wanted to make it a big film. So, yeah, that was our goal. So I'm glad you felt that way. Yeah.
Well, mission accomplished on that front, most definitely. So, it was one of the situations where I could definitely, I was in the documentary, I was involved, I was in it, just enthralled with the whole thing. And in certain points, especially the landfill sections there, I was very thankful that, I wasn't actually there.
Well, it's a funny thing. There were two hard sites to film. One was the landfill. Malaria is rampant, right? It's an endemic in Madagascar. And they get bubonic plague and pneumonic plague, frequently.
Wow.
And those landfills are just full of rats, right? And so when I had a great crew and, we would, muster our courage and walk in there to film because it was really important to do so. When I brought in a guy to run a drone so we could get some aerials, he wouldn't go near the place, because it's a health hazard. And the smoke is putrid, right? There's spontaneous combustion of the garbage and lots of people dying of respiratory disease and things like that. The other difficult place was the large quarry, the quarry that Tina lived and worked in.
Right.
I really loved that. I had focused on that very early on in the planning because the visuals of the large quarry cut into the side of this hill were extraordinary. The different shades of gray, right, from the rock that were there and the jagged edges were really something. And then seeing the people, the families, right, working away in there. And to me, it represented the parallel for an American would be a sentence of hard labor, right?
Exactly what came to mind. Exactly.
Right. Breaking rock, hard labor for your entire life. And that is their sentence. Their sentence is a lifetime of hard labor.
Yeah.
It's a sentence created by, all the economic and political structures, but it is a life sentence. And there's really no way out. So Tina, her parents worked there. She worked there. Her kids, as much as she's trying so hard to give them an education, get out of there, they're probably going to end up working there. It's tough. Yeah.
As you mentioned, that's something that just blew me away was she's sitting there and she's breaking rocks. Literally, folks, I'm telling you right now, it's exactly as we're describing it. It is literally just breaking rocks to break rocks, smaller and smaller and smaller. It's insane. But she's got her child there. I don't know what, 3-4 years old, maybe probably closer to 3.
Yep.
They're hanging out together and they're just having a conversation about mommy's sweating a lot. Looks like tears, but it's okay. Mom is just working. And then they introduce her parents and, they're in their 60s, maybe even 70s. And they're sitting there on the ground with smaller rocks and they're tinkering around with little smaller hammers, breaking it down. I'm like, this is literally I can't even imagine wanting to be there as an individual that lives there. You'd be like, I have to imagine suicide is prevalent.
Yeah. It's not, but alcoholism is. Yeah, I mean, which is a form of suicide, I guess, and it's rum and it's everywhere, and predominantly, I mean, certainly in women, but predominantly in the men in the country, and it's tough because there's for a lot of men, the dreams are long gone, and there's really not a lot of hope, and there's a lot of pain. And a lot of hard work, which, I mean, they work very hard for that $1 or $2 a day. Right.
Nothing.
Right.
I think one of them was 29 cents a day if she got to wash laundry all day long.
That's
29
right.
cents.
Two
29
cups.
cents.
Could buy 2 cups of rice to feed six
Oh my
kids.
gosh, man. Just unimaginable.
Yeah.
And that was something that I noticed too, is you didn't focus a lot on the men. Really, the only men that were the focus were the politicians.
That's right. Well, that wasn't deliberate. So it's a great observation. Really great. It wasn't deliberate. I went in there to follow families. And when I was able to get introduced to families, part of me I wanted to hear their stories. First of all, they had to be willing, right,
Sure.
to have us invade their privacy. And I had to make clear what we were doing. We were filming them, and it would forever be available, their life story, good, bad, and ugly. And that, they had to agree to do that, of course. But it had to be something. I didn't want to select the hardship, the one hardship, right? These people had to be representative of the Malagasy situation. And so I wanted people from different places, different ages, and different backgrounds. And so when I went around and met people and interviewed to see if there was a story there or what their situation was, what I learned, and to a person, was these women are everything. Like they're so dedicated to the education of their children, even if they're not educated, even though their parents weren't educated. They want their children to be educated, even though their children with an education might not be able to get a job. And they will do, as you saw, anything, right?
Right.
To get the money, to get the education and for their kids. And they were really inspiring. And the men were hard workers, but in terms of, I've said this like at Q&As and film festivals and things. I said, what was really remarkable was the dedication of women. And, you'd see these women say, what? Well, of course, right? I mean, what are you talking about? The women and children are the ones who suffer in poverty the most, period, end. And it is the women who are dedicated to the children in those situations in extraordinary ways. And in ways a lot of men just can't be. And the men, and to be fair to the men, they had to do tough labor, very hard labor. But it was also common that because there was no barriers to leaving a family, right? Like Lynn's family, right, down in Fort Dauphin. I mean, she had these kids by different men. There's no barrier for the men to say, "Oh, you're pregnant? I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Right.
What did she had 5 kids and 5 different fathers?
Six different fathers. Yeah.
She had 9 children altogether. 2 were
9 pregnancies. Yeah.
Yeah. She lost 2 in pregnancy, and then she lost another one when it was 8 years old. And I'll tell you, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say anything more about it, but the story there is so powerful. It is so just.
That is one of my favorite stories, because when we first started interviewing her, we could tell that, she's got this amazing personality, right?
Oh, yeah.
Strong, and she lit up the camera, and I was fascinated by that. But the story was a hard one. And in part, I was thinking, is this representative? Is this too extreme, to be a representative of Malagasy women? Would it be, part of wanting to portray the families was so that we in the West could feel some empathy and relate to these people in some way. So you wanted to tell their stories right down to the quick. But she was so compelling, we kept filming her. And then there was this reveal about, which I'm not going to say, but
right.
That would spoil it. But this reveal that we only learned late in shooting about what she had wanted to do when she was young. And it was just like, wow, right? This is an amazing, amazing story, a sad story, except as you saw, for her daughter.
Yeah. And the attention that she gave to all of the children, the effort she put forth to make sure there's food for the children to eat, getting them dressed for school, just doing it. everything she did, if she wasn't working, was dedicated to those children.
Mhm.
And that spoke tremendously. In contrast, I started thinking of some of these shows that are on television that my wife watches and that I watch begrudgingly, not really begrudgingly, that they live these highfalutin lives in these mansions, and they talk about having children. It's so difficult, and they have to have this nanny and that nanny and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I'm going, this lady has 6 children, and they're her world.
Yeah.
This lady needs 2 nannies
Yeah.
for one child. The contrast, I mean, it's literally from one end of the spectrum to the other, but it's just like, it's mind-blowing that they can be that far apart.
Yep. Yep. No, that's absolutely right. And again, I think, yeah, I was at a film festival, and the program director wanted me to go down and introduce the film to the audience in the beginning. And as we're walking down, she said, this is a pretty hard hitting film. And, our audience is used to sort of uplifting movies. Is there something that you can give them? And really, I find a great deal of hope and sort of joy out of seeing the strength of these women and their dedication. And you get a sense that even in the worst conditions, the worst despair, they are not giving up. They will not give up. That goes to, the heart of the human spirit, which has to, no matter who we are, you just have to be happy to be able to witness something like that.
And it's real happiness. She finds happiness in living. She finds happiness in her children. She finds happiness in surviving, literally.
That's right.
And, I think so many of us, especially if you look at the climate in America today, not just with the coronavirus, but everything else that's going on, we're not happy, obviously. And I don't know that we know what true happiness is anymore.
Yeah.
True happiness to us right now are all of my fancy little trinkets behind me and all my fun stuff and, whatever. Everybody has their own little hang up, but we've lost sight of that, and we've lost sight of working together. And is that something you took into account? Obviously, this wasn't happening when you were filming the documentary, but at the same time, it kind of was.
It was. No, you're right. No, it's a great observation. It really was. I was particularly, we started filming. I started doing research in 2014, and we started filming in earnest in 2015. And in November 2016, I felt the world turned upside down. And really, there were remarkable parallels, I felt, between the political antagonist in the film, who was the president, and then what was happening in not just the United States, but in other parts of the world. And it was so I saw that, and I was alarmed by that. But I also saw that when you have these people living on the edge, right, living on the economic edge, that the growing wealth inequality in our country and generally, in the world, puts more and more people on the economic edge. And certainly we are seeing that now, right? The effects of the pandemic with the economic dislocation are destroying people's lives. And I think the World Bank estimates that there's in 2020, there's going to be another 40 to 60 million people going into extreme poverty. That's a lot of people going into extreme poverty. And, there won't be that many, there will be relatively few of them coming from Madagascar because they're already in extreme poverty. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot that we can compare to our lives in looking at the plight of these people. And as I say, the courage of these people too.
Right, exactly. And that's what's so inspirational out of the film is the courage.
Yeah.
They still have pride. They still take pride in what they do. You know what one of the things that really blew me away, and I don't remember which one it was, but she woke up in the morning with her children and she said, "Hurry up, get up, let me tidy this up a bit." And
Tina. Yeah.
It was Tina. Okay. They live in shanties. I mean, it's a shanty town, yet she still has pride.
Oh yeah.
Clean up the house. Let me clean this up so we can get our day started.
Well, you see Lynn, she's got a put together broom sweeping the courtyard, which is dirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Just sweeping the dirt to get all the footprints out and make it look nice. Yeah, no, absolutely. They have nothing, but what they do have, they really try to take care of and value the smallest things.
Yeah,
right. And to your earlier point, things that we just discard, don't care about, throw away, they cherish and value. And there's a great deal of joy in that, I think.
I think so too, and you even saw it at the rock quarry.
Yeah.
She cleaned her area before she started breaking rocks.
Right.
She cleaned her area before she took a rock and made it a smaller rock, but she still wanted a clean area to start from. That was mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, dude, I got to break this rock. I'm going to throw it over here. I'm going to break this rock, I guess. Whatever, But no, extreme pride, extreme setting an example for her child and showing what it means to still carry yourself regardless of your economic hardships and regardless of the challenges that their environment is bringing them, even though it's such a rich environment, it should never happen. So where's the disconnect?
Yeah. So this is the nub of it. Poverty is not fate, right? Poverty isn't inevitable. There is sufficient resources on the planet to eradicate poverty, full stop, full stop.
Sure.
You need to channel resources into education, healthcare, housing, and work opportunities. That's it. And as you see, people will do it. They'll get educated, they'll work hard, they'll progress. But, we have these institutional structures that really put friction on progress. And the growing wealth inequality in the world, I think, I'm all for people making money. Absolutely. I think the extreme wealth inequality where 8 men have as much wealth as the bottom half of the world, 3.6 billion people. I don't think that's quite right. Not that they didn't earn it, or but that's just an easy hook, right? It's nothing against those 8 men. It's just that we know that a declining percentage of the population is acquiring most of the wealth. And with that, and not that they're declining in numbers, they're growing in numbers. It's just that everybody else is growing in numbers. And with that comes extreme political and economic influence to protect that wealth.
Oh, yeah.
And so they do it, and they do it through the political system. They do it through the economic system. They do it through the social system. And that prevents really meaningful progress in eradicating poverty. And it's possible to do. It just is possible to do. And that's one of the things I do want people to think about in all of this, is that it can be done if we had the will to do it, and it would not be that painful. It would take, resources that would be, the terrible word, reallocated, but channeled into humanity. And I think that can happen. It won't happen now because we seem to be moving in an opposite direction in the world, but it will happen, and it can happen. And that will be better. That'll be great for everybody. It'll be great for everyone if the least lucky of us, and it's just a matter of where you are born.
Sure.
It's the least lucky of us, can have an education and gain some hope for their lives and the lives of their children.
Wow. Do you see Madagascar? Do they have the resources there themselves to turn things around?
Yeah, absolutely, they do. It's a mineral rich country. They've got mines, rare mineral mines. They've got agriculture. It's a very rich country that way. But they should have more tourism, right?
Yeah.
But the poverty is such that, and again, it's sort of like you need the will to tackle the poverty to be able to create the opportunities for agricultural production, to preserve the rainforest. You're not going to preserve that rainforest. You're not going to preserve the lemurs. And the rainforest and the lemurs and the beautiful coastline draw tourists in. That's all going to go away if you don't solve poverty. It's just going to all go away. I've had this conversation with environmentalists where millions of dollars get spent on documentary films about the lemurs. Right? Morgan Freeman just narrated one on the lemurs of Madagascar. And poverty is not even addressed. And when I talk to environmentalists about that, it's easier to get people to focus on these lemurs.
Sure.
It's hard to discuss poverty. And yes, it is. And it turns people off. But the lemurs will disappear if poverty is not addressed in Madagascar. And many of them get that. And I've had great conversations with many and been invited to talk with some of them and some groups, even the Oakland Zoo that was all over this. But yeah, they have agriculture, they have mines. A lot of the mines and a lot of the wealth has been leased, right, in long-term leases to foreign companies,
right,
that have exploited it. And we don't know what those deals are because you've had people in charge of government who make these deals, which are terrible for the country, right? Great for the conglomerates that come in, terrible for the country. But there's no question that something was paid under the table to these people. So they were fine for making those deals. And then for, the next 25, 50 years or longer, those resources are gone. You saw in the film Mark Ravalomanana's deal with South Koreans, right?
Right.
And so that's, it's like, what are you thinking? And that was going to be literally for free. The compensation would be employment for people. Other than that, he was just giving it away. At least as a country, they were giving it away.
Right.
So yes, things can be done, but the political system there is just broken. It's broken, and hard to imagine. There's a new young leader in there, Andre Razuela, and hopefully he can make a difference. I don't know if he's going to. There are some good things about it, some bad, but again, it's a systemic issue. It's an institutional issue, but there's the political structure there is broken. You can't, anyone who wants to run, there's no established political party. So anyone who wants to run creates their own political party, and then they go out and try to get people to vote for them. And I don't know, it's all pretty dysfunctional politically. And while the international community tries to instill democracy through conditions on economic aid and things like that, it's almost an imposition of their idea of democracy, that they impose these conditions and then sort of agree to or adopt whatever democracy comes out just so that they can say, okay, now we'll give aid. And that's great. The aid is necessary, but it's almost being complicit in a dysfunctional democracy in so many ways. So there's got to be something there, some bold leadership. I'm encouraged by many of the young people I've met, many of whom would like to get involved in politics, but even like in our country are afraid perhaps of being compromised too much by, how do you succeed without that? And it's a tricky situation. But again, it is possible. He was portrayed in the film as an expert, a guy named Father Pedro Pekka. Mm-hmm. And he's created Akamaso there. And that model is a model that addresses poverty, eradicates extreme poverty, educates people, provides healthcare, and that can be sized up. That's just a matter of money. He raises all of the money himself in private donations, and that could be scaled, and that could be scaled through the whole country. In fact, it could be scaled around the world. It's just a matter of allocating the resources in smart way.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, it's a very daunting task for sure. I want to back it up for just a second, and it's kind of a trivial question, but I'm so curious. When you're talking of the lemurs and then we talk about poverty, What is the separation there? How closely related are the two? I mean, can you walk a mile and suddenly you're in the rainforest from some of the poverty, or is it hundreds of miles away? How close are they to each other?
Yeah, it's both. Madagascar is the fourth largest island
Right.
in the world. It's enormous. It's the size of France, and so the rainforest. So basically, poverty has caused the deforestation of the country. Right, people have had to cut down trees for charcoal. The country gets very cold in the winter. And to cook food, you need the charcoal, and that's what the trees do. So at one time, it was mostly forest, and now it's mostly not. But there's the rainforest, particularly around the coastal areas, that's preserved. And it's beautiful. It's magnificent. I've been into it. It's rich with diverse plant and animal life, really special. So, yeah, you can be in a very poor area and walk into the rainforest, as people do, for example, to find bushmeat, lemurs, right, and other animals, or to cut down trees. And, it's protected. It's protected through international agreements, protected to a degree in the country, but there's only so much you can do with that much poverty. People have to eat. People have to stay warm.
That blew me away, too, when she just went down to get fire.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go down here to the neighbor's house and get some fire. Hopefully they'll give me some fire. I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know if I'm watching And Afraid or if I'm watching a documentary. This is
fire and water, right? I mean, they don't have water. They don't have drinking water. And it's pretty bare bones living and scraping through. And as I say, they're getting sick all the time because of the water and because of malaria. And in fact, I love the country. I'm dedicated to it and love the people. But malaria is endemic. They have hurricanes and floods. They have locusts. They have the plague. It's like these biblical disasters are visited on these amazing, amazing people all the time. There's a way through it. As you pointed out, or asked the question, it has rich natural resources and really hardworking people. We saw the effects in 2009 and the 5 years following when the United States pulled the plug on their textile industry. The hard workers, right, doing stuff that was supplying our clothes, our garments, right? Puma and all of that. When we pulled the plug on that, people just had to go to the streets and into the landfill.
It's rough. It is. You've got to see this film to understand it. It's mind-boggling. It really is, and it'll put you in your place quick. So, what are your long-term goals? What do you see in the future? Are you going to do a Madagascar sequel or progression, or is there anything along those lines?
I love the question. Yeah. So it's not a sequel, but there's a second film that's, I guess you could call them a duology. There's a trilogy in 3. I think 2 is a duology. They're not dependent on each other, but they relate to each other. And that is this guy who's Father Pedro Pekka. So when I interviewed him, I was just taken with him and his story, and he is an expert in Madagascar. And the more time I spent with him, the more I realized he's probably one of the most interesting and fascinating and heroic people I've ever met. And at the age of 16, growing up in Buenos Aires, being a gifted athlete, he had an opportunity to play professional soccer in a Premier League club in Argentina, but he was studying to be a priest at the time. And made that choice, and not just a priest, but a missionary to go to the poorest country on the planet. So, Larry, you and me at 16, we would have gone pro, right?
Yeah, you can bet.
Right, and it's a remarkable story again about dedication and willpower and the desire to do justice and the great sacrifice to do so. But he's an extraordinary guy, so I loved his story, and I convinced him to let me do a documentary of him. So we extended the production time and did some other things, but we've we wrapped that. We finished post-production at the end of last year. We're into film festivals this year now.
Okay.
Because of the pandemic, we don't have any physical festivals yet, but we had a world premiere online at the Brooklyn Film Festival that ended last week. And so that's the next film. Some of my friends have encouraged me to do a third on the politics, but make it a narrative, not a documentary. I don't think I'm going to do that because it is painful traveling to Madagascar. It is painful. And the conditions are pretty tough. But I will always go back. I'll always go back at least once a year just because of all the friends I've made there and the people I care for. But yeah, I'm the pandemic has allowed a lot of thinking time at home. And so I've got two projects that I'm beginning to work on. One, and both relate to law in a way. One is about a whistleblower, a certain aspect of a whistleblower's life, and one is about a Supreme Court justice and a certain aspect of his life. And I've started the research on that. I'm getting kind of excited about it.
Oh, wow. That sounds cool. Very cool. Well, I am definitely looking forward to seeing. Can you give the name of the one that just hit the festivals this year?
It's Opeka. And
okay. I see you there.
OPEKA, opekafilm.com. And we'll be going online in a few more festivals pretty soon.
Very, very cool. So, but let's not forget about Madagascar. It is a mind-blowing film. You have got to check it out. And, I don't say that about a lot of shows. I have these little knick-knack shows that I like to watch or whatever, but this is, it'll change your perspective, or at least it'll give a little different perspective on the way things are right now in our country and the way things are that we think are so bad. But if we put that in contrast to what's going on in other parts of the planet, we realize that, wow, this is not so bad after all.
Exactly so.
Cam, I appreciate it, man. It's been great.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to talk to you about Opeka sometime as well.
Next time around, I'd love to do the show again. Really would.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another awesome episode of the Readily Random podcast. Hopefully you picked up a lot of cool insight from Cam. Man, it was just great. It was great talking to him. It's a phenomenal film. And I've said it 3 or 4 or 5 times, but check it out, man. Go check it out. It debuts the 26th of June on Amazon Prime and several other streaming services. So take a look at it. And until next week, we'll do it again. Thanks for listening. Bye.
You could be larger than life.